I worked for a local company owned by the wealthiest man living in a very small rural town.
Explaining how I reached this specific situation requires a quick look back at my early military career path.
I joined the military before finishing high school because my late birthday allowed me to start very early.
Choosing a career in mechanics felt right, since I always loved fixing things and working with my hands.
The military offered a significant sign-on bonus, which served as a great incentive for my young financial future.
I survived basic training while spending money only on absolute necessities to maximize my personal long-term cash savings. After finishing advanced training for my specific military job, I had saved nearly an entire year of pay.
While peers splurged on cars, and I invested heavily in the stock market and purchased Bitcoin very early on. I used my deployment earnings to pay off my parents' mortgage while keeping my focus on the future.
My only real indulgence was my hot rod, which received the remaining portion of my hard-earned bonus money.
When I finally discharged from service, and I felt financially comfortable despite facing a very nasty and difficult divorce.
I did not have unlimited wealth, but my early Bitcoin investments turned out exceptionally well over 2 decades.
After the divorce, I worked as a mechanic to stay busy and recover the assets I had lost.
After 10 years of bouncing around, I decided to set roots in a small, quiet, and peaceful town.
I saw a help wanted sign at the local lube shop and figured the work would be simple.
As a 6'3" veteran with long hair and tattoos, and I certainly stood out among the local townspeople.
Sue, the bookkeeper, noticed my veteran status on the application and marked it with a prominent letter, Y.
Later that same afternoon, Sue called to ask if I could return to meet the owner named Peter.
He showed me a calendar of his car collection and asked me to identify the specific rare models.
I recognized the Mustangs, the Ford GT, and even the rare Bricklin SV1, which really impressed the owner.
Peter offered me the job at a rate of $100 per day for a standard week. The agreement was a flat daily rate, regardless of whether we finished the shop's work early or late.
I would have every Sunday off, plus 1 extra day during the week for my own personal time. For about 1 full year, the work went smoothly, and I had absolutely no issues with the arrangement.
Peter asked if I would work as a relief mechanic at his other lube shops in neighboring towns.
He offered $20 extra per day for travel, and I agreed to help cover it for other employees. I did this for another year, until disaster struck, when Peter met a woman named Karen, and fell. They married within a month, and Peter began supporting Karen and her serious gambling addiction immediately after that.
One week, I noticed my paycheck was only $250, and I questioned the amount.
Sue told me there were changes and suggested that I speak directly to Peter about the pay shortage.
Peter showed up with Karen in tow to explain why my hard-earned pay was suddenly so short.
He claimed bad weather and closing the shop early had negatively affected the business and my daily rate.
Karen interrupted, saying it wasn't fair for them to pay for hours I did not actually work there.
I countered that we had a negotiated day rate, which is why I never received any overtime pay.
She claimed that wasn't how things worked anymore, and I would only be paid for my hours.
The following week was extremely busy, and we worked much later than normal to finish every customer.
I even gave up my day off to cover for a sick coworker during that busy week. My paycheck should have been over $800, but I only received exactly $600 that week.
When I asked Peter what happened, he simply said, "We agreed on $100 per day."
I reminded him of our conversation the previous week, but he just said, "It is what it."
Karen walked in and asked what I was bitching about now in a very rude and condescending way.
I told her I worked 80 hours and they only paid me for 60 of those long hours.
She called me contracted labor and refused to pay a single penny more than the daily rate agreed.
Peter just echoed her sentiment and told me I heard the lady regarding my unfair pay situation.
I convinced myself to stay because the job was easy and covered my very few living expenses.
My only other local options were assembling sheds or slinging chickens at the nearby industrial poultry plant.
She claimed he had an OSHA violation for wearing tinted safety glasses while working in the shop bays.
This was nonsense because the sun hit the workers directly in the eyes during the evening hours.
My reaction attracted Karen's attention, and she shouted an insult at me as I tried to walk.
I told Sue that she needed to talk to Peter before Karen's mouth caused serious financial trouble.
Sue refused to get involved, stating she only kept the books and wanted no part of the drama.
This toxic behavior continued for another entire year until I finally reached my absolute breaking point today.
I started my malicious compliance on a day when I was already in a very bad mood.
I learned that a close friend who saved my life in Iraq was killed by a driver.
I told the shop I would work the pit all day alone and to leave me be.
My coworkers knew something was wrong and respected my space as I focused on the difficult work.
I didn't expect to see Karen, since I was working at the shop furthest from the main.
Peter and Karen arrived and she immediately started screaming about a mess she claimed to see inside.
I always kept my work area spotless, and her complaint was about a stack of common filters.
I kept them there for easy access so I wouldn't have to wait for the top workers.
Peter looked down and told me to clean up the pig sty like he was talking down.
I told Peter that today was not the day, and he should just move on with her.
This infuriated Karen, who felt disrespected, and Peter told me I was free to leave the job.
So I simply left. But the story does not end there, because a massive storm was coming.
That exit was just the first small flap of the butterfly's wings that started a massive disaster.
Peter called the next day and asked me to stop by the main store on my way.
I thought he was going to apologize for the day before, but I was very wrong about that.
Peter informed me that I was now on a 6-month probation period for my recent actions.
He cut my pay to $50 a day and removed my daily $20 travel allowance.
I asked if he was truly serious about this and if he considered the weight of his.
This is when Peter's true colors shone, as he claimed I was lucky not to be fired.
He said he only kept me because he pitied me as a struggling and broke disabled veteran.
I never discussed my money with anyone, so his perception of my wealth was based on appearance.
I stood to my full height like a drill sergeant about to give him some serious counseling. I told him he should reconsider his life choices and the person he chose for a business.
Peter mocked me, asking if I would sue him and if I could even afford an attorney. He assumed I only survived on a small monthly VA check and desperately needed this low-paying job.
That arrogance kicked in my malicious compliance, and I prepared to go to war against them both.
I called a labor lawyer and paid the $3,000 retainer to start my legal battle.
We sued for an unsafe work environment and unpaid overtime and serious minimum wage violations against his company.
I continued working for him while the lawsuit moved forward, and it was a truly glorious feeling.
My lawyer was a former Marine who understood exactly what I had in mind for this case.
After 6 months of slow rolling the process, the paperwork was finally ready to be officially served.
Peter and Karen were served at the main store while I was working at my remote location.
The process server stuck around to witness the inevitable reaction that I knew would follow the serving.
When they read the lawsuit, Karen and Peter completely flipped out and started shouting in the store.
Peter threatened me and Karen screamed that I was fired while questioning my honorable military service record.
The process server recorded every single word they said and gave the audio directly to my lawyer.
We added unlawful termination to the lawsuit because firing an employee for suing is completely illegal everywhere. The very next day, I opened my own lube shop and started recruiting my former coworkers today.
I offered them higher pay plus commissions, and they all wanted to join my massive legal lawsuit.
2 years of subpoenas and sworn testimonies followed as we gathered every piece of evidence against them.
We obtained security footage and 5 years of financial books to prove their patterns of worker abuse.
We finally went to a mediation to settle the case, and they offered a measly $50,000.
We declined the low offer because it did not even cover the unpaid overtime they owed us. Then our metaphorical Apache came in to save the day in the form of official IRS documents.
The IRS sent tax documents because of our request for the company's full and detailed tax records.
Peter held each lube shop as its own individual LLC to keep his employment records completely separate.
They thought it was smart to file for a veteran tax credit at each of their shops.
In their filing, they claimed that I was a full-time employee working 36 hours at $12 hourly.
At the next mediation, my lawyer presented these reports to their lawyer and the shocked neutral mediator.
After a quick 20-minute discussion, they came back and agreed to settle at our full requested amount.
They paid $400,000 in unpaid overtime to be split between the 15 workers on suit.
They also covered all legal fees and a personal settlement for my specific unlawful termination lawsuit case.
I received $20,000 for each shop I was listed at, plus unpaid wages for 6 months.
Their only demand was a gag order so that nothing would leave the mediator's table after signing.
Of course, we signed and took our paychecks, but their tax paperwork found its way to someone.
The IRS decided to audit Peter and Karen, and an investigation was opened for serious tax fraud.
I sold the shop I opened to the guys who came over and jumped on the lawsuit. They each paid me $8,000, and I washed my hands of the entire local situation.
I put my house up for sale and moved away to start a new chapter of life.
I went back 8 months later because the lawn guy had been arrested and the yard grew.
The city informed me they would fine me $100 a day until the yard was.
So I went down to mow it myself and decided to check in with my local realtor.
Who do I see but little old Sue, sitting pretty at the front desk of the office?
Sue could not speak fast enough to tell me every single thing that had happened since then.
What I thought was a simple Apache turned out to be an absolute atom bomb for Peter.
Peter filed for bankruptcy to avoid going broke after making a plea deal for his tax fraud.
He was forced to pay a ton in unpaid taxes and remain on a long probation period. Karen took off with some dude she met at a casino, leaving Peter to face the consequences.
I asked Sue two final questions about who reported the tax paperwork and Peter's car collection status.
She told me she had no idea and suggested I check the parking behind the realtor's office.
On my way out, I took a peek behind the office to see a very familiar car.
A safety green SV1 was sitting there looking pristine in the afternoon sun behind the small office.
Peter started selling off his collection early and cheap, hoping to buy them back after his bankruptcy.
To this day, I have no idea who actually turned in the fraudulent paperwork to the IRS.
My personal theory is that whoever compiled the claims noticed something strange and reported the obvious fraud.
However it happened, it could not have happened to anyone more deserving than those two greedy people.
The lesson here is to never underestimate a veteran who knows his worth and the legal system.
Integrity and hard work define a soldier, but fighting for justice is a lifelong commitment for me.
The legal system worked exactly as it should have, to protect workers from predatory and abusive bosses.
The town remains quiet now, while the echoes of this massive legal battle slowly fade into history.
My former coworkers moved on with their lives, carrying the compensation they rightfully earned through our lawsuit.
I finally have the time and the resources to work on my own car in total peace.
Malicious compliance is a powerful tool when used by those who have been wronged by the powerful.
Peter's empire crumbled because he chose greed over the loyalty of the people who built his success.
Karen's influence was the catalyst for a downfall that was probably inevitable given their lack of ethics.
The story serves as a warning to those who think they can exploit the hard-working people daily. Moving forward requires leaving the past behind, but never forgetting the lessons learned during the hard fight. Once a soldier, always a soldier means defending what is right, regardless of the personal cost involved. This chapter is closed, but the impact of standing up for oneself will last for a lifetime.
Peace is the ultimate reward for enduring the storms created by those who seek to destroy others.
My passion for mechanics remains the constant thread throughout my journey from Iraq to this new life.
Living well is truly the best revenge against those who tried to keep me down and broke.
Thank you for following this journey through the chaotic world of small-town business and massive justice.